Hi, today's good person to know is Steve Masters. He's Head of Services at Red Rock Media, and his talk is on a journalistic approach to content marketing and the power of interview. Steve trained as a journalist and says you need to tap into people's emotions. Journalists know how to do that and tell stories because they have an inquisitive mind, and says to treat your content portfolio like a magazine because it's all about variety, so that it appeals to different readers. Steve says that there are many ways in which you can interview someone for a whole host of reasons, but he prefers to get quotes from experts, references and contradictions to add colour to the piece. Steve gave us his top 10 tips when doing an interview. Now, some of them may be obvious, but it's worth a mention. 1. Do your research. 2. Agree questions beforehand. 3. Where is interview taking place? 4. Check your gadgets work. There's no point in having a dictaphone if it hasn't got any batteries, and to have pen and paper as a backup. 5. Mix business with pleasure because you want your interviewee to feel relaxed and building a rapport is essential. 6. Talk to them and have a normal conversation with them in between informal questions. 7. Listen to sound bites, which Steve says is the lifeblood of a good interview because it can make a fantastic headline. 8. Thank them because it also doubles up and reassures them that the interview's gone well. 9. Check your facts. There's no point having an inaccurate piece. And finally, 10, promote it. Steve says that an unseen piece is useless. Now, needless to say, this video is fantastic for anybody who's doing interviews and wants to know how they can improve on it or not sure if they're doing it right. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for watching.
Journalists tell stories really well. They find good ideas and they know about how to find angles and headlines. It's all about giving the audience what that audience wants to consume. And they find facts, they research things, they have inquisitive minds. The magazine mindset is all about variety. A magazine, by definition, is basically a collection of things. Pick up a magazine, most people flick it to the back page and they flick like that. You browse a magazine, looking at what's in it, and then your eye will settle on a few things. You'll read some captions and some photos and some cartoons, and then probably you'll go back to the feature that you like the most and you'll start reading that. And that's generally how people they browse. We scroll the internet, we scroll through Twitter, we jump and land on things that catch our attention and we read those. We don't read everything. However, with the magazine mindset, it's the collection of the content in that theme. There's a commonality between the magazine's theme and the audience. So let's say architecture, right? People who love architecture will probably read or buy an architectural magazine. All the content in that magazine won't all be about how to build a house. It won't all be about an interview with an architect who has been working on a new project or bylaws and all those kinds of things. There will be all kinds of things that are interesting to that audience who don't only wake up every day and talk about architecture. Imagine Martin Luther King when he said, "I have a dream," and he did his speech. If a content marketer or a weak content marketer was to write that story, they probably would say what Martin Luther King can teach us about dreams. The power of that story is the quote. The quote from the man himself. It's from the heart, and it's got passion. I have a dream. That's the headline. We very often, as content marketers, write headlines according to what we think Google is going to rank us for. That's a fair approach, but it's the wrong approach. With interviews, there are so many types of content. You can do a Q&A, you can do a video interview, a vox pop, you can do a profile piece. There's so many ways that you can interview people and so many reasons that you might want to interview them. I write a feature. I don't want to just write something around one little link, one little quote. I want to include colour and value and give real detail to people. So I don't always do this, but I prefer to get quotes from people. I prefer to ask experts what they think. I'm writing a piece about this, you know about this, can you please give me a quote? Include links to 3 different things, reference points, quotes from experts of all kinds of types that complement each other or contradict each other. Make the story come to life, and sometimes the headline writes itself. Stalk before you talk. Don't do your interview unless you know your subject. When you're interviewing somebody, you need to know what their passion is. You need to think about what inspires them. If you're planning to speak to somebody, very often in the B2B world, people that you interview for stories, even if it's just to get one quote, are quite nervous. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to phrase a quote. They don't know how to respond. And if you're interviewing them in person, whether it's a vox pop or a dictaphone or whether it's a one-to-one interview, sometimes people are worried. They don't know how to conduct themselves. They're worried about what you might ask. They don't want to make a fool of themselves. So if you give them some kind of heads up, give them an idea of the topics, what kind of things you want to learn from them, or what kind of input they can have to your story. And they are the life of your story, so almost build an angle that they fit into what is actually around them. Make arrangements of the right time and the right place, and wherever you have power to kind of control the conversation, but at the same time make them feel comfortable. If you've done your preparation when you're planning a story and you're relying on somebody to give you some quotes, the best technology you can have with you as a backup is a pen and paper. But on that pen and paper, bear in mind that your technology might fail. You might turn up and your camera doesn't work, your battery's run out, or something's broken, you have to use a pen. Oh shit, I can't do shorthand, what do I do? Talk slower, please. You know, it's really disconcerting and you miss some of the quotes. So what you can do is have your questions planned out on your notepad, have the topics you want to cover, and almost kind of leave spaces that you can then fill in. And if you need them to talk slower, just ask them to repeat things. It is about business because you're there for a purpose, but it should be a pleasurable experience, particularly for the interviewee. People love to talk about themselves, as we all know. Play to the ego of the person, and the emotion of the person is really important. And one of the ways to do that is to build a rapport. Very often, people who don't have experience of writing features or doing interview-based content, they will do the standard, here's my question, I'll quote you. A Q&A feature is perfectly valid if the purpose is just to show the Q&A, but it has no context, it has no feeling and no colour. You can't build a story about where were you when you interviewed them, what mood were they in, what were they wearing. So you need to converse, you need to just have a chat basically. It's probably one of the most important things of all. I have a dream, the lady's not for turning, any soundbite like that, you have to listen for that kind of thing. Now, Martin Luther King, Obama, Margaret Thatcher, God rest her soul, they came up with their soundbites. Most people don't. Soundbites are the lifeblood of a good interview. Thanking people is really important because these interviewees are your influencers, they're your industry leaders, thought leaders. They're the people who hopefully can get you more of a reach, they can give you credibility, they add personality to the story, to the brand, and to the marketing efforts that you have. Checking your facts is important. 50% of content marketing is creation and writing. 50% is promotion. An unseen piece of content is useless. And building momentum is what really makes the difference. But what gets you there is promotion, is telling people about this stuff. Getting the stories right so that they can be shared, having emotion, having great headlines, and having great people being interviewed that people want to read about. All of that stuff just makes it better over time. It's final thoughts of thinking like a journalist. Sniff out an angle. The angle is important because that makes the difference, so that you're not like everybody else. Create a great story. Use emotion, use human beings, use quotes. Give colour to the piece. Don't just make it one-sided, promoting one thing. And finally, drink like a fish, because that's what all journalists do.